Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm back here with Stephen Pesavento. You probably will remember him from seeing him on an earlier podcast that I did with him, which I thought was lovely. So it's great to bring him back. And today he's on our new show, Unpack Your Life. Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here with you, Jane.
Thank you so much for joining us. Stephen, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Where to start? That's always the question. But I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, moved every 4 years, 2 to 4 years growing up, a lot of change. But what that taught me was, you know, I, I'm the oldest of four kids, grew up kind of in a rough upbringing, but it taught me and it gave me this motivation to say, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to make something of myself. I'm going to go and build a business. I'm going to learn how to add value to the world. And I'm going to make sure that, my family and future family and all of these different pieces, you don't have to experience some of those challenges. So, fast forward, I run a real estate private equity company and fund. And, we go and operate apartment buildings across the country, especially in the Midwest and the Colorado region. And I've been doing that for nearly a decade. And when I look back, I started my career in management consulting. I quickly jumped over to high growth tech startups and I learned a lot along the way. But the one thing that I've found that's most important in business is, and it's the same thing that's important in life, it is how can you add value to the world? How can you deliver something that somebody else needs, that they're willing and interested in paying for, and create alignment along the way?
Absolutely. And I just want to share with everyone, Unpack Your Life is in reference to being authentic across the board and bringing your genuine self to the table. When you show up, you need to be who you say you are and not someone else, because there's so many imposters out there. And one reason for inventing this show is I found myself somewhat being in an imposter position, and I didn't like that. And I was extremely unhappy. And sometimes we can put on a good face, but those emotions and those thoughts are always haunting you deep down inside. And I always talk about that burning fire of success that's under the belly and not in the belly. And how do you get through that? But before you get through all of that, you must be authentic. You must be true to who you are to make things happen. So, with that being said, I wanted to ask you this question. Could you share a pivotal moment in your life that made you unpack your life and bring the true Stephen Pesavento to the table?
Yeah, I think the answer to that, there's so many times in my life that have been pivotal moments. I think one of the most recent ones is looking back. In 2019, I'm running a real estate company. I'm having a lot of success. I have a podcast with millions of listeners and downloads, and there's a lot of growth and success. And my life is 100% business 100% of the time.
Absolutely.
I came from a rough upbringing, but a lot of love.
Yes.
And I wanted to get the heck away from that type of life. And what that drove me to was pouring myself into business. And I created a superpower out of that pain. And the irony of this moment was, I'm 35 today. In 2019, I'm a young guy, but I've been cranking at real estate for 5, 6 years. And I have this moment. My sister is leaving my house. We spent 2 weeks together. She kind of lived all over the country. And she was driving back home and she got in a car accident and
Right.
she died. She didn't make it. She didn't make it back to home to our family. And it's one of those moments that really breaks you open as a person. It's one of those
Oh,
moments where
definitely.
you think at the core, hey, I've got it. I've got it together. I'm the investor mindset guy. I'm out here cranking on business. I know how to solve problems. I've been through extremely difficult things and I've grown. And when something like that happens, when you lose somebody that's super close to you,
Oh,
it really is a wake up call. It really
oh,
is that moment where, you're laying on the floor of your house, you're crying every day, you're feeling that pain, and you're asking yourself, like, how can this happen to me? You
Absolutely.
see it on the news, you hear the stories, but it doesn't really touch close to home until you have that kind of loss. And from that moment, I had to really take a look at, like, what's most important to me. And like any achiever, any entrepreneur, anybody who's going out there and doing stuff,
Hmm.
we climb that first mountain and we find our way to success, and our identity is tied up in our business. And when we get knocked down, we say, hey, great, we're going to climb another mountain. We're going to make it a bigger mountain, and
Right.
pour myself into building an even bigger and better business, and all of these things. And yet, once you get past the busyness and you look back, and I did, three
And the
years
white
later,
noise. Absolutely.
um, I recognize that, again, I had put myself in a position where I'm not living in alignment with what is actually most important in life. And that doesn't mean that you can't go out and do amazing things and big things,
No,
but
absolutely.
those kind of moments, I found, redefine the way that you look at life. And then when you can get into alignment with the purpose and impact that you're
Mhm.
creating, everything feels so much better. So happy to unpack more of that.
That's wonderful. It's not easy to share a lot of things. You have to go through the healing process of, and I shared with you, I lost two best friends, I believe, on our last podcast conversation. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand the loss and what that means. It's kind of like love that has nowhere to go. You don't know what to do with it, but sit in it and feel it. And, I always tell people grief is very tricky. You have to figure that out
Mm-hmm.
on your own. There's no time stamp on it. It's something you live with throughout the rest of
Mm-hmm.
your life. It just does it get better? I think you turn around and you realize you had some very, very happy moments and you try to live off of that. But then there are those moments when you're alone and you start thinking, and it comes back like a wave. So it never goes away. I don't think it gets better. I think we just have a more understanding of it, and we try to replace the sadness with the good times, and just bear with that. And let me ask you this. What were some of the most important lessons you learned from unpacking that part of your life? And how have you shaped things here now and today with who you are today?
Well, I'll kind of break that up into two separate kind of things to talk about. I think, first and foremost, when you lose somebody, it's sudden, especially if it's sudden, especially if you're not expecting it. It's a real moment of getting that call, feeling those emotions, and
Hmm.
really just being kind of knocked off your foundation. And it's very
Absolutely.
difficult. And there's nothing you can really do to prepare for it. There's nothing that you can do to put yourself in a position to be strong through it. What I found in that process is, I leaned into my coaches. I leaned into my mentors. I asked for advice and support. And fortunately, I had a couple of coaches, and one of them taught me this strategy on grief, which is, and it's true on all emotions. It's, I think, one of the most powerful tools you can use. And it's when you're feeling that grief, you're actually pouring that grief out of your cup. You're feeling those emotions. You're opening yourself up and you're refilling it with something else. And one of the biggest mistakes people make when they're having a negative emotion is that they ignore it. They don't feel it 100%. They feel it 10%, and they feel it 10 or
Right.
20 or 40% or 50% all the time. And it comes out at a time when they're not ready for it, when it's not opportune, versus being able to go in systematically and have times of your day, whether it's every 30 minutes, every hour, once a day, once a week, where you're going in and you're truly feeling the pain of that loss, of the things that are never
Right.
going to happen, of the things that you had dreamed about. And then simultaneously going into that dark place, feeling it fully, emptying the cup, but then simultaneously or subsequently sitting down in that same moment and finding all the things you can be grateful for. And in that first moment, maybe the only thing you can be grateful for is that you're still alive, that it's a sunny day, that you have a
Yeah.
house and you have some food and you have coverage. And then eventually over time, as you build strength and comfort in that, you can find gratitude in the loss. And so I think one of the biggest takeaways from that for me was I found this part of myself, this strength that I never had connected with. I found a way to process very difficult emotions in a very healthy way. And I found the good things that come out of one of the most painful moments in your life. And I think of those good things, I look back and it's, it brings tears to my eyes talking about it. And it's much easier to talk
100%.
about 5 years later after processing those emotions than it was in the moment. But it still brings up that emotion, but it's okay. And that emotion's a good thing. The key is that you have to be able to let it go. And you have to look at it from this place. And I think the positive takeaway from it is that it really gives me a perspective. It makes me live in the moment. It makes me say, I love you to those people who are close to me as if I may never see them again.
No,
And
I agree with you
obviously
100% on that.
I'm experiencing some emotions about it, but I think the underlying thing is that in any given moment, it could be the last moment. And there's actually a beauty in the presence and the appreciation that that brings. And so I think it's one of the greatest gifts that you can receive when you get woken up to that, because it changes the way that you interact with the world. And I think in a more positive way if you have the right perspective about it.
And that's okay. I think that's okay. I totally get that. Um, I totally understand what you're saying here because I was just with a friend of mine and I shared, it's been 5 years, and I shared with them, the passing of one of my best friends. And the feeling and the emotions came back, and I thought, wow, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect to start, having an outpour of crying and sitting there talking to him. And I started apologizing, and I thought, why am I apologizing? It has made me a better person. It has shaped me differently, and it's made me understand that life is this quick and it can go so quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know when that could be. And it could be myself, or it could be, someone else that I love just as much as I loved, those two people. So it does totally reshape us as people, the way we look at the way we looked at things the day before something like that has happened. And I think it makes us stronger, but it also makes us more aware, um, about the people that we care about and the people that we love. We become more in tune to that. So I think that's a
Yeah.
wonderful
Well,
thing. And if it has given you more power to understand what grief is, then wow, that's a good thing. Because not a lot of
I
people
think
know
it's
what to
given
do
me
with
more power to understand what grief is, but I think it's given me power to understand a variety of emotions,
it.
both
Right.
positive and negative emotions, to recognize that those emotions are a signal. It's giving us a message to tune in and check in. And once we receive that message, the
Hmm.
alarm no longer has to keep going off. We don't keep getting the reminder of it because we're acknowledging it and we're moving forward through it. The other piece of it that I think is really powerful is that these things happen. This is part of life.
Yes.
We are all going to die someday. And it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be 50 years from now. And God willing, we hope that it's far off into the future. But when we actually connect to that and we can use that as a reminder to be in the present moment, whether that present moment is working on deep work, building a business, building value, or whether it's spent with loved ones, that we can always have that ability to check in and appreciate it, what we're doing. And when we no longer like the habit or the repeated thing that we're doing or the business we're working on, that we recognize that if tomorrow was the end day or today was the end day, that we wouldn't be happy with what we're doing. And so therefore it's an immediate opportunity to change. And the truth is most people
100%.
wait until that moment of massive pain to make a change. And I had already been on the path of change. I am not the person I was at 10, not the
Of
person I was
course,
at
of
20.
course.
And I continue to evolve and iterate on a faster level than most people because I'm tapping in to that pain that I've experienced and using it to move me forward, or tapping into the perspective of pain in the future and using it to adjust what's going on today. And so, losing people, it's awful, it's terrible, it brings up a bunch of negative things. And I watched other people in my life that chose to go into a dark place instead of a place of light. They chose to go down the using the excuse of, hey, well, this person's gone, so I should drink more, I should use drugs, or I
Right.
should not, be showing up for my family in the way needed to be. And it's a great example of where you can go if you choose to, versus, fortunately for me, I was in a place where I said, hey, well, this is the perfect reason. There was nobody's fault this happened. It was absolutely an
Absolutely.
accident. No drugs, alcohol, no one to blame. But I
Hmm.
looked at it and said, well, should I drink more or should I not drink at all? Should I make sure I'm not covering up these emotions and feelings, and instead make sure that I'm fully processing them? And I didn't have a drink for 3 or 4, 5 years because I wanted to make sure that I was 100% present to those feelings. And because of that, I was
Hmm.
able to move through them and come into a productive perspective to have.
That's wonderful. Not everybody can do that. I'm, thinking back on when that happened. I remember getting off the plane and going straight home and making the biggest gin and tonic I think I ever had in my life, and drank it totally. And it was, a few days after
Yeah.
everything had taken place and I was there. And my situation was a little different because they passed away in my arms. So I
Mm.
was the closest I had ever been to death with anyone, because 5 minutes
Yeah.
ago they were alive and 5 minutes after they were gone. So I had to deal with that and also deal with everyone around me sharing what happened. So it was really difficult for me. And
And I
then
think
nine,
it's important to note there's no shame in using anything as a tool, right? There's no shame in
no,
it. It just happened to work out for me because every year I do a dry January or sober October, and I kind of
right.
lean into cleaning up, and then I usually, slowly start enjoying those libations. But at the time I was in such a clear-headed space that it was simple for me to say, "Oh, of course I'm not going to do that." And it helped me tremendously, and someone else's experience might be totally different.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm sharing with you. My experience was completely the opposite. I did go somewhat down that road, but I caught myself because I knew I had responsibility and work. And it also gave me a voice,
Mm-hmm.
um, in reference to what had just transpired in my life. And I didn't, that's another thing. This is a great segue into the next question. It's so important. How important is it to have a strong support system, both professionally and personally, when something like that happens and you do have to unpack your life to reach your goals, but you're still going through this, damaging emotional situation that has happened to you, because you still have to go on. And I was very, you know, open with everything I was doing. My work was, I was like you, I was being successful, I was moving forward, but that smacked me so hard that I had to just like sit back and go, oh my God. And not having a support system was the worst for me, because I didn't have
Yeah.
anybody that was around me. I was away from my family. I was in a strange town. I had been there for a few years, but I wasn't home. And I always felt like I needed to be home, but I couldn't because I had to work. I was a successful real estate agent at the time, moving forward and moving fast through my industry. And when that happened, I was totally godsmacked. And the support was not there. So I still had to carry that every day, put a smile on my face and keep moving forward.
I think for me in particular, my situation is similar and yet different in the sense that, I live 1,600 miles away from my family. I moved away intentionally. to, create a life in a different place and follow that kind of dream. And yet when the moment happened, I'm by myself in my house, no family around, nobody to, hang out with in person. And
Hmm.
so in that moment, I was able to fly home, be supportive, be present. But eventually, you come home, you come back to the house, you get back online and work with the people that
Right.
you're working with and you're interacting, and you're not really whole. Like, you're a broken person when you're going through something like that.
Yes,
When
you
I
are.
look back, I was fortunate to have spent a lot of time in the personal development, personal coaching space, both me as a coach in business, as well as having some great coaches around me. So I remember I had two separate coaches that kind of leaned in and said, "Hey, you know, I want to support you through this however I can, no cost." Did a couple sessions, shared some perspectives, shared some
Right.
tools. That was really valuable to have kind of a check-in or a person to be able to lean on. The second thing that was really important was I leaned into these support groups that are available for people who've just lost their siblings or their children. And at first it was actually really good to go and be there, because
Hmm.
while nobody else around me understood the pain that I was experiencing, those people did. But I eventually, after a handful of meetings, I realized a lot of these people have been coming to these for 5 years or 10 years, and they haven't evolved out of it. And I was being the supportive person, even though I was the most recent. And so I kind of had to leave that behind because I didn't want that energy. But one thing I will share, just as something for the audience to just keep in mind, because it was very eye opening for me, was the show of support from people who were both close to me and people who I hadn't talked to in a very long time. That
Right.
phone call, that text message, but even more importantly, that card. I
Right.
remember I had kind of a little shrine on my table of some important things from her and these cards and memories. And it was surprising how impactful a meaningful card from somebody who I'm not even that close with, but we used to have a great, close working relationship or whatever, how meaningful that was, or how
Right.
meaningful it was to have a friend who, is super busy, but they stop by and they, hang out with you while you're kind of in a low state, even though you're not really functioning. It's those little things that I think are important. And when you don't have the support system, you don't have a spouse, or you don't have family nearby, or friends that are living their own life and they can't be there to support you all the time, it's important to go out and find those people who can relate, or lean into professionals that can, whether it is therapy or whether it is coaching or whether it is these groups. Because no matter what you're going through, we're talking about the loss of people who are very close to us, but this is as relevant to a variety of other situations. I'll share three. It's as
100%.
relevant to going through a major breakup, a divorce. It's as relevant going through a bankruptcy or some kind of major failure in your business. It's as relevant in anything that you're experience personally or professionally. You want that community, you want to lean into it. And that's what's going to allow you to step out and be moving onto a path that's going to be meaningful for you.
Did you find that once you kind of, cleared the clutter out of your brain with all of that and some of your emotions, did you find that you were able to be yourself more, or you kind of found a new insight to who you were? Because, in real estate, you have to be pretty
Yeah.
authentic. You got a lot of shysters out there, and they're doing all kinds of things, and they're not really caring about the customer. I find that when you're always your authentic self and you bring that person to the table, that's what gets the job done for you most of the time. But going through this emotional roller coaster with grief and all, and not having a support system, how how did you see yourself dealing with people after that
I
in your
would
business, in real estate, and being authentic?
I would say on those early days, it was very difficult. Now, I run an investment business, so I have investors, I'm buying properties. I also had a very successful podcast.
Right.
And so at the beginning days, it's putting on a mask. It's trying not to have it come up. It's trying, bring it up with the people where it's appropriate, but not share it with others. I remember I had an interview with Chris Voss. He had just released his book. It was a really big deal that I got him onto the show. And that was 2 months after this passing. So it was very difficult, but I knew I couldn't reschedule. I knew that it would be, maybe I could have, but I knew I had to show up. So I was able to go through that process, release those emotions, show up the best I could, and be as authentic and real as I can. What I'll say, fast forward, the big takeaway was I was being authentic in the best way I could for many years well before that. But what I noticed was that going through a major change, a major pain event, that what it did was it helped me shed a bunch of layers and really dig deep. And
Right.
so in that process, what I really received as a gift was I was able to go in, and while I'm broken down, while I'm feeling all those
Mhm.
emotions, while all these defense mechanisms that have been developed over years, masks, if you will, developed over years, were down, I was able to reach inside and actually handle and process a lot of the pain from much earlier, from things that are not even related, from other situations in my life. And what I got in return was a version of myself that was even more deeply connected to my heart, a version of myself that was even more deeply connected towards the desire to support and engage with other people. And I was able to let go of a ton of fear that I had on the relationship side, on the business side, on the personal life side. And what that led me to was, I developed an incredible relationship with my now fiance. We just recently got engaged. And looking back,
Oh,
I had always
congratulations.
desired this. Thank you. It's really exciting. And I had always desired it, but I had so much fear. I had so much perfectionism. I had so many things. And it's interesting, by shedding all of that, now it doesn't happen in a moment, but what it did was it opened me up to be very specific on what I'm looking for, who I'm attracting, living with intention, and has put me in a better place in my business, in my personal life, and
Right.
much more aligned.
Did you find that you were able to cut some toxic ties that you probably would have held on to because of fear in the industry?
Yeah. I mean, I have been much more intentional about really
Absolutely.
only partnering with or working with people that are in alignment with how I want to operate in the world. And that includes, we run a fund, so we raise tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. And I sometimes will engage with, or have someone on my team engage with somebody who's like, hey, is kind of a jerk, but has a ton of money. And I'm just like,
Right.
hey, I appreciate where you're coming from, but you're not a good fit for us. Doesn't matter how big of a check you can write. Like, it's not worth it. Life's too short.
And that's just being true to who you are, being able to even,
Yeah.
spew those words out of your mouth when you know you might need the check, but understanding if they're not a good fit,
Yeah.
this is not going to work anyway. And everybody's going to be unhappy in the end, especially if they're a jerk. I mean, because we have so many people out here, that will go along with a lot of things for the check. And that's what I say. I think
Yeah.
being your true self is having true happiness. And if you can't be happy with what you're
Yeah.
doing, then in the end, it's not going to work anyway. And if you're around people that are
Yeah. I'm
toxic
not willing
and
to
you don't,
sacrifice my
right,
Yeah, I'm not willing to sacrifice my values or happiness or anything in order to make a buck. And what I've found is that by being in alignment with that, interestingly enough, it actually attracts significantly more wealth, significantly more success. Sure, there's challenges. Sure, you might want to take that check for
100%.
short term gain, but you look at it from this long term perspective and the short term enjoyment.
I agree with you on that. I had to cut quite a few toxic ties recently and realized they were no good for me, personally, and definitely emotionally when you're out here dealing with, people's money. And it's really interesting how it comes about, I think, for most people. But for me personally, I had to really look at things and go, wow, I had to even leave. Just say, I'm going to cut these ties and I'm going to leave. I'm leaving and left Florida, blew the house up and left Florida, and now I landed here in
Mm-hmm.
New York City and it's a whole different ball game. Of course, it's starting over, but it's starting over with no fear, being totally open and understanding the people that I do want to attract and putting out there that energy, by unpacking everything that I thought was, to the left of what I believe in. And like you said, your values, you don't want to risk that for anybody or any amount of money. Because
Yeah.
if you're not in alignment with who you are, then you're totally screwed because you're like out here
Yeah.
floating around trying to find your place and it's not real you know so I find
Mm-hmm.
that very interesting. I think you and I have a lot in common when it comes to the grief part and what's going on out here in business and trying to get through it. I mean, we're not some young chickens. We're trying to still make it in life. We've been out here for a while. um, my next question
Yeah.
to you is, like, what is your vision for the future, in your career and being and in your career? Well, I know what your personal life is going to be like now. You're getting married. I think that's fantastic. Any two people that can come together and understand each other's values and fall in love, I think is a wonderful thing. But what's your vision for the future for your career?
Yeah. So I would say, the vision, personal, professional, create an amazing family, have a great life, enjoy it, travel, have more than I need to create that life and comfort and security. And yet, from a career standpoint, I love the challenge. I love growth. I love what I do in business, and I want to work on things and spend my time doing that kind of work. And so, what I've found is we have a unique ability to be able to create amazing returns in apartment buildings, in real estate, and be able to create a better place for people to live and create exceptional returns for our partners and work with incredible vendors and partners that have alignment. And so, really, at the core, you know, the future of my career is building a firm and building on the amazing foundation we have, to work with hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of individuals, family offices, RIAs, institutions who have capital that they need to deploy. They need to create a return on investment.
Hmm.
And we have a great mousetrap built to be able to do that. And so, in the short term, that is a lot of relationship building. It's a lot of
Absolutely,
conversations. It's a lot
absolutely.
of connections. It's a lot of focused on finding great deals and making sure they're operating well. But at the core of the way that we do that is by creating an amazing team, by attracting and hiring the best talent, by incentivizing them, by giving away more of the profit in order to bring in the best people, and together being able to do something different in the industry. Now, there's a lot of ways to make money in real estate, and there's a lot of way to make money as in investing. But at the core of it, I really believe in this idea of alignment. And so, no matter whether it's
100.
apartments or it's industrial or
Yes.
it's
Yes.
businesses or private equity, any of those things, when you get everybody aligned and you have the right vision and values, everything really goes to the next level.
This is so true. I hear how you're innovating. I don't understand. Give me 1 second. Let me just get rid of that. We will always be doing business, right? Always be closing at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
You got to
told, right?
learn that do not disturb button.
I know it. They don't, but it's like I turn it off and I'm like, I'm on the computer and here it comes. It sounds like,
Yeah.
you guys have been on the path of innovation for a while in your industry. And, I just wanted to ask you, what motivates you to keep pushing, you know, your boundaries?
Yeah, it's a personal obsession with growth. It's a personal obsession with learning and growing personally. You
Mhm.
know, obviously that growth leads to amazing opportunities, and I've chosen an industry that is very lucrative. I'm happy to take risk because I know that the upside of that risk is incredible, and I'm happy to find all the ways possible to reduce and eliminate that risk. But
Mhm.
the real uh, kind of motivation behind it is twofold. One, I want to grow personally, and I want to build a community and team of other people around me who all have that same vision and values, and we're going in the same direction. But two, I want to create an amazing life. I want to be able to go and do whatever I want, whenever I want. The life I live today compared to the way I grew up
Not think about
is
it.
night and day difference. I would never have imagined that it could actually happen. It was just a dream, right? I go to Hawaii every quarter. I get to spend time with my friends and family in Hawaii. I get to go and do great things. And I want my kids and their kids and the family to be able to do that. And so there's a big motivation to not only create something, but also enjoy the fruits of that labor. And I get so much personal satisfaction, so much personal enjoyment out of the game. And I really think of investing in real estate and business as a game. And the rules are always
Definitely.
changing, and you got to change with
On a
them. And
daily
so it's
basis.
fun and it's exciting. Yeah, it's
On a
always
daily
changing on a
basis.
daily basis.
Yeah, the rules change on a daily basis. I mean, look what we're dealing with this whole commission structure now. There's so many questions around it. It's like and it doesn't even make sense because it should have been this way from the start. But of course, there's
Yeah.
always the bigger machine that's regulating everything, and everybody's going crazy with that. You know, personal growth. I think a lot of people take personal growth as, a cliche. Well, personal growth is the game changer. What they don't get is your personal growth is the secret sauce to success. It's not found in the chase. It's found in the ambition and understanding who you are and bringing your authentic self to the table. And a lot of people don't get that. Maybe between you and I going through tragedy such as we did was a huge wake up call for us and said, listen, life is short. We want to live it to the fullest. I want every second to be happy. I don't want to abide by somebody else's rules. I need to live life on my own terms. And living life on your own terms is definitely being you, being true to who you are. And that's how success comes about also, because people want to be around people that they can identify. They don't want to be around people that they can't identify. And if you're not yourself, then who are you?
Yeah. I think I think it's 100% true in business, and the ROI is very clear. Building
100.
wealth, building income, feeling that satisfaction of success. But if we take that off the table, personal growth is about becoming the best version of
Of
yourself. It's
yourself.
about being able to have better, closer relationships. It's about all of the things that come as a result of that emotionally, physically, all of these different things. And so a lot of people get turned off by the idea of growth. But I think when you look at it through the right lens and you look at mindset as just a set of thoughts and beliefs that lead to how we show up in the world, you recognize that it 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 would be silly to just run the same operating system. You and I are not running operating system from 2000 on our computers. It wouldn't even work today. And so
No,
we always have to be evolving. We always have to be changing. And the people who are most upset about these changes in your industry in particular are the people who have not been preparing for change. Like
not been
when the Fed
working.
raised rates from essentially 0% to 5.5%, 500% increase, they I could either look at that as like, great, the business is going to be really hard. I'm going to give up. All the things that we used to think were true are no longer true. But if you just look at it as, great, well, they just changed the rules of the game. They didn't notify anybody. So if I'm aware of it and I'm excited about adapting to a new game, I'm going to beat everybody, and it's going to be
Exactly.
fun. And I love winning, and I'm okay with losing as long as I'm learning from it, because you can never really fail totally as long as you get back up, you take those lessons, and you
You
keep doing
have to
stuff.
get
And
back
that's
up.
true in personal life as well as professional.
Well, there's no room for failure in real estate. If you're in real estate and you're not showing up, then of course, because you have to show up no matter what, of all aspects of it, and take it on. And, with what you're saying about the interest rates, I mean, a lot of people, they flipped out over the interest rates, but I think about it in the past, the interest rates, I remember when they were 9 and prior to this. It was just, what we were dealing with as far as the country is concerned. Everything went awry. The market crashed. What do they expect? We have to put it back in order somehow. And the people that were lucky enough to have those very low interest rates, they ran with it. And then some of those people who were extremely lucky, for some odd reason, they turned around and refinanced at a higher rate. But that's guidance, isn't it? So, like you said, if you're not prepared, you're not
Yeah.
prepared. You're not going to win the game. You have to be in it to win it all day long, especially in our industry, whether it's retail, investments. Like you said, the ROI has to be what we're looking for, and the numbers never lie. That's one thing, numbers never lie. So, with that
Yeah.
being said, they can
Absolutely.
take these um, terms today that we're all using and everyone used so plentiful, pivot, shifting, mindset, your skill set, all of it's real. If you don't have the mindset nor the skill set and you're not able to shift when the market changes, you're in trouble from the start. And if you're going to do it in this business we're in, it's not our grandparents' business anymore. This has completely turned on its head.
Yeah.
And going back to personal growth, if you look at luminaries like Steve Jobs, I mean, he died doing personal growth. He would have and missed out on a lot of things. I remember in a statement he said how much he missed out on life because he was so geared on personal growth. But that type of individual, that's something completely different. His personal growth was for the world. Most people personal growth is for
Yeah.
themselves and their family. But I mean, looking back at that statement, I always remember, what he talked about because we're so measured by the shiny things that we have, the baubles, all of those things are what means something to people. What car, what jewelry, what clothes, now today, the women, they're showcasing their closets with these, you know, 50 and $60,000 bags in them. I mean, it doesn't even make sense anymore. When you think about personal growth,
Yeah.
you don't measure it from things because those things won't make you happy. You measure it from
Yeah.
growing emotionally and like you said, in an alignment with people you want to be around and people that are attracted to you that are going to be true to who they are also. And that's how you come together.
Yeah.
So it's very
Yeah.
interesting, and I
Amen to
think
that.
yes, and I think speaking to people like yourself, like you and some other coaches that are therapists also, and listening to what they have to say about unpacking your life, I think we're on to something here because it's so important to unpack everything to become one and say, this is where I want to go. This is how I want
Yeah.
to be happy. This is how I want to show up. I want to show up true to myself and authentic and have that secret sauce so I can succeed. Because, like I said, success is definitely not in the chase. It doesn't happen in the chase. You're chasing your tail when you're doing that. It's the hard work that you put down.
Yeah.
It's showing up for the people that you care about and doing the work. And I still have a lot of work to do on myself, after this whole thing that I'm going
Yeah.
through right now. And I think I probably will open up and share more on the podcast about my situation and what I went through. But the healing will never end. That's what I can say. And maybe once it does, which I don't find that happening in my life. I think, the trauma that we go through, we keep some of that with us so we can remind ourselves that we never go there again. I think that's when possibly the healing will help because you always live with the trauma.
Yeah.
There will always be a piece or a reminder there for you. And not only
I
that,
don't
with
think
that
it's
being
ever
said,
gone, but
I think with
yeah,
that
I
being
don't think it's
said,
ever fully gone, but I do think you get to a point where it no longer has the same impact. You can release yourself from it. You can look at it from an emotionally disconnected place. Now, sure, some things keep following you around and it's there, but it turns into wisdom once you're able to disconnect emotionally from it because you learn the lessons, you see what's there. And a lot of people don't, and yet we can.
and I think once you know what that is, when you feel that, that red flag goes up. Oh, I know what that's like. I got to go left. That person is going right. I'm going left because I don't want to feel that anymore in my life. I know I'm really familiar with that, and that's an ugly feeling. So I'm going to let that go. So I think,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, especially with people that you come in contact with, immediately you do not want to be in that space with them. I think those
Yeah.
feelings come about and you just go, "Ooh, oh no, I'm familiar with that," and we just cut it loose. But it's been great talking to you.
Yeah.
I had a few really great conversations, and I'm really pleased with where I believe my podcast is going to go. And you never know, I might call on you again just to talk to you about unpacking because we all go through it. You never know what's going to happen in the future. So, hey, let's stay in touch. Stephen, tell everybody where to find you.
Amazing.
I
Well,
know
hey,
we
thanks
had.
so much for having me on, and I wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any words you have to say to the audience before you leave? Any takeaways? You gave us a lot of information.
Yeah, I think the wrap up on it is life happens. There's going to be things we like and things we don't like. It's all about our perspective. It's about learning and growing. And that play applies to personal life as much as business. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. We've got a great show called the Investor Mindset Podcast. You can find it on any channel podcasts. And then, the private equity firm, vonfinch.com. You can learn more about what we do if you have interest in getting involved investing. So thanks so much for having me, and I appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for showing up on Unpack Your Life. I'm going to just stop the recording now. Stephen, thank you so